A very good afternoon to all of you. Let us begin today's lecture with a topic in paper 2 anthropology, that is emergence and growth of anthropology in India. So in this lecture we will be discussing topics in paper 2 anthropology. So we'll begin with the emergence and growth of Indian anthropology, the contribution of Indian anthropologists, and we shall discuss every topic one after the other. So probably this will be my last lecture for this batch. If we complete whatever we are supposed to complete today. Okay? Fine. So first let's begin with unit number 4 in paper 2 anthropology. Emergence and growth of Indian anthropology. And contribution of Indian anthropologists. Growth of Indian anthropology. So when did actually anthropology begin as a subject in our country? First of all, you know that even until now, many of you all did not know that there was a subject called anthropology until you started preparing for civil services, isn't it? So when you started your civil services journey, you wanted to choose an optional and you went to the list of optional subjects provided in the notification, and when you had to choose one of them, you saw the subject list and you got to know there's a subject called as anthropology, and it is very good scoring, and mostly science students opt for people from science background opt for anthropology optional. It's not that only science students can score well in anthropology. In fact, students from other backgrounds like arts, commerce, business, economics background score equally good or even better than students belonging to science background. So then, even if you speak with any of your friends now who are not into civil service preparation, if you tell them you are studying anthropology, I'm sure many of them will not be able to know what anthropology is, right? That is how the subject is. So it is not a very popular subject because it is not offered in the curriculum of most of the universities. So when did actually the anthropology, that is Indian anthropological journey, begin? That is what we will be discussing. That is how anthropology emerged as a subject and how people started taking it up as a discipline. What is the important building stones which led to the growth of anthropology, which is there presently. So all of this we'll be discussing. So in the earlier times, many people did not even know there was no knowledge about anthropology as such. So what people used to do was these traders, merchants, rich businessmen, and travelers, missionaries, they used to travel across to faraway distant lands. They used to look at the culture of the people living in those regions. How is their food patterns? How is their religion? What are the cultural practices which they follow? What the beliefs they have? How is their dressing pattern? So they used to be amused because it was very different from the rest of the world, isn't it? So they used to observe all this and they used to record that in their diaries and they used to send it back to their countries, or they used to come and report back in their countries saying, I traveled so far to such a place, there were these kind of people, this is how they dress, this is the language they speak, this is the religion that they follow, this is the food they eat, these are their cultural patterns, and so on. More and more about what are the festivals they celebrate, how they conduct marriage, what are the rituals that they follow in the day-to-day life. So like this they used to explore more about people living in isolated regions and distant regions, and they used to make monographs on that. So this was the humble beginning actually of anthropology. Then later, when India came under the colonial rule, the British wanted to know and understand the people, their culture, their caste, what is that matters most to the Indians. So when they wanted to understand what is this caste, what are the Indian people's religion, rituals, beliefs, only then, only if you have good acquaintance of the people whom you are going to administer, only if you know about them thoroughly, you can rule over them, isn't it? So that is what happens when you also have to become an officer. So after you clear your interview stage and you get into IAS, you will be sent to Labasna, isn't it? There you will get a lot of classes and lectures on overall administration, and then when you get your cadre, so whichever cadre you are allocated to, be it Karnataka, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, UP, whichever cadre you get, in that state again they will give you an extensive course. That is, so in Karnataka we have the Administrative Training Institute in Mysore. So that is where people who get Karnataka cadre are sent for training. So there again you will have a training period for I think, I'm not sure about the duration, at least it's definitely more than 6 months. So there they will give you enormous knowledge about the history of Karnataka, geography of Karnataka, what are the arts and culture over here, what are the historical places over here, what is the language, what is the culture of the people. So more in depth you have to know about entire Karnataka, about nook and corner of Karnataka, so that when you become a DC or any other post, whenever you, it is not that after you get into IAS you get only DC post. There are various posts, like you get CEO, you get district collector, you get secretary post. So like this, different posts are there. So whichever department you are posted within Karnataka, you should have a very good knowledge about the natives, about the native people, their history, geography, language, religion, culture, art, all of this, so that you can effectively do administration, isn't it? So then even the British also, when they wanted to rule over us, they wanted to know more about that, about our people, culture and so on, and they encouraged people to, in fact they wanted to train the young recruits of civil services that time. So the British civil servants who were moved from Britain to India, they did not have any knowledge whatsoever about the culture or the tradition or the anything about India. So to train them, again they started the Anthropological Survey of India. So like this it goes on. So this is what we will be discussing in this chapter. So Andrew Beatley says that Indian anthropology means the study of Indian people, culture, irrespective of the nationality. So when we are discussing about the contribution of Indian anthropologists also, we will be discussing about anthropologists who did studies in India but belong to different nationality. So when we speak about the emergence and growth of Indian anthropology, here we are not discriminating the anthropologists based on their nationality, whether they belong to Europe or whether they belong to USA. If they have done some studies with respect to Indian culture, with respect to Indian anthropology, we consider them as Indian anthropologists. Okay, so please keep this in mind. This is very, very important. So here we are not discriminating the anthropologists based on their nationality. If they have contributed in some way or the other for Indian anthropology, we consider them as Indian anthropologists, and we also include them in the study of Indian anthropologists and Indian anthropology. So even in your examination, when you get a question, write about a few Indian anthropologists. You can write about the Indian anthropologists which we will be discussing now. After emergence and growth, I will be discussing about Indian anthropologists like Verrier Elwin and many others. Then I will be repeating this once again. So do not worry, let's begin with this. So according to Andrew Beatley, Indian anthropology means the study of the Indian people, culture, irrespective of the nationality. So here we are not considering the nationality of the person who is studying the Indian culture. So the beginning of Indian anthropology can be we can mark the beginning of Indian anthropology with the setting up of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. So to make the study easy, we can divide the emergence and growth of Indian anthropology into 4 different phases. First one is the formative phase, second one is the constructive phase, third one is the analytical phase, and the last one is the evaluative phase. We shall divide the growth of Indian anthropology into 4 different phases and understand each of them in detail. So first let's look into the formative phase. The first phase is the formative phase. formative phase, which is between 1774 to 1919. 1774 to 1919. The formative phase, which is the first stage of the growth of Indian anthropology, begins with the establishment of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. In 1784, the Asiatic Society of Bengal was established, and with this begins the In 1784, the Asiatic Society of Bengal was established. In 1784, the Asiatic Society of Bengal was established, and with this marks the beginning of growth of Indian anthropology. So along with that, there were a number of Indian journals also that were published, like the Indian Antiquary in 1812, the Journal of Bihar and Orissa, Man in India. Man in India is very, very important. So a series of district gazettes, handbooks containing ethnographic notes on tribes also appeared during this period. And there were a lot number of British anthropologists who came to India, and they also served as a great inspiration for the study of primitive people in India. So who are these British anthropologists who came to India and studied the Indian tribes during this period? They were W.H.R. Rivers, who studied the Todas of Nilgiris. Radcliffe Brown studied the Andaman Islanders. G.H. Seligman and B.G. Seligman, they both are brothers. G.H. Seligman and B.G. Seligman, they both studied the Vedas of Ceylon. These were the important British anthropologists who came to India during the time of the formative phase, and they studied the Indian tribal population. Also, the expedition of W.H.R. Rivers is called as Torres Strait Expedition. I hope you have aware of this. Sir would have discussed about this when he discussed research methodology in anthropology, right? Torres Strait Expedition. So this expedition also takes place during the formative phase of growth of Indian anthropology. In addition to this, various Indian scholars like Hiralal, L.K. Ananda Krishna Iyer, Sarat Chandra Roy, S.C. Roy. S.C. Roy's contribution to growth of Indian anthropology is enormous. So you definitely have to mention his name and his works whenever you're speaking about the growth of Indian anthropology. And that is why rightly he is also called as father of Indian anthropology because of his book Man in India. Then R.P. Chand also published a book on Indo-Aryan race. So these are the major events which occurred during the formative phase of growth of Indian anthropology. Next, moving on to the constructive phase. The second phase is the constructive phase. Constructive phase. The establishment of social anthropology in the postgraduate curriculum in the University of Calcutta marks the beginning of the constructive phase. The first phase, that is the formative phase of Indian anthropology, begins with the establishment of Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. The second phase, that is the constructive phase, begins with the beginning of a postgraduate curriculum in anthropology in the University of Calcutta. So this marks the beginning of the constructive phase. The K.P. Chattopadhyay was appointed as the first professor in Calcutta, and he was a person who was trained under the renowned anthropologists W.H.R. Rivers and A.C. Haddon in Cambridge University. So K.P. Chattopadhyay had his studies in anthropology under the supervision and guidance of W.H.R. Rivers and A.C. Haddon in Cambridge University. Later, he was appointed as the first professor in Calcutta for anthropology. R.P. Chand became the first lecturer, and he is also famous for his brachycephalization hypothesis. Anand Krishna Iyer also studied the ethnography of Travancore and Cochin, and he became the first HOD in Calcutta University. And in addition to that, the contributions of other anthropologists like Nirmal Kumar Bose, D.N. Majumdar, B.S. Guha, T.C. Das, Biswas, all of this happens during the constructive phase. And in 1945, a full-fledged research institution called the Anthropological Survey of India was established by the efforts of B.S. Guha, that is Biraja Sankar Guha, and Professor von Führer-Heimendorf prepared the monograph of primitive tribes of Hyderabad during the constructive phase. These are the significant milestones that have been achieved during the constructive phase of the growth of Indian anthropology. Next, moving on to the third phase or the analytical phase. So the second phase is between 1920, second phase which is a constructive phase is between 1920 to 1949, that is up to independence, isn't it? Then the third phase, which is also called as the analytical phase, begins with from 1950 and extends up to 1990. After independence, so until independence, during the British colonial rule in our country, mostly the British anthropologists influenced the Indian anthropologists in their studies. But after independence, now Indian anthropologists came under the influence of American anthropologists, and there was a huge shift in study of the anthropology. That is, there was a shift from study of the tribal people, and the shift was towards studying the village. That is, village studies became more and more popular and fashionable now. Remember, in the third phase or the analytical phase, by now India had achieved independence, and now we came earlier, prior to this, that is during the constructive phase, Indian anthropology was mostly influenced by the British anthropologists. Later, after independence, Indian anthropologists came under the influence of American anthropologists, and there was a huge shift in the way anthropology or what subjects anthropologists studied. Earlier, anthropologists were interested more in studying the tribal people, but now there was a huge shift that was noticed. So now people started studying more and more about villages. Village studies started becoming fashionable now. So the study of Indian villages became fashionable, and American anthropologists like Morris Opler of Cornell University, Oscar Lewis. Can you recall Oscar Lewis? When did we discuss about Oscar Lewis? Rural cosmopolitanism. Are you able to recall? At least few of y'all, right? What is rural cosmopolitanism? It says that Indian villages are not isolated, closed entities. In fact, Indian villages have lot of ties and contacts with several other villages, at least 400 villages, with various ties like marriage, trade, family, kinship, religious, cultural ties, isn't it? This concept of rural cosmopolitanism was given by Oscar Lewis when he presented a paper based on his comparative studies on villages in Mexico, and that is Tepoztlan village in Mexico and Ranikera in India. At least when I give this sentence, are you able to recall that we have already discussed this? So I guess now you will be understanding why we are discussing these topics at a later stage and not in the very beginning. If we had started off study of Indian anthropology with how Indian anthropology grew and what are the contribution of Indian anthropologists, you would have been slightly clueless as to what is all these things. But now that we have discussed most of the topics, not most, all the topics in Indian anthropology, now when we are discussing how Indian anthropology originated and how it grew in various phases, you will be able to get a better understanding, right? Fine. The third phase, which is the analytical phase, begins after Indian independence when we came under the influence of the American anthropologists, and there was a huge shift from study of tribal people towards village studies. Village studies became fashionable now, and American anthropologists like Morris Opler of Cornell University, Oscar Loomis from Illinois, David Mandelbaum from California came to India along with their students, and they gave us the concept of action anthropology, which gained importance in India. We have already discussed action anthropology also. What does action anthropology suggest? It says that the anthropologist should only act as a catalyst. He should study the native people, he should give us a report, whereas he should not directly involve in any of the measures which are taken by the government or whatever activities there or plans or programs. That is, he should not involve himself in the implementation. Okay, he should only study the people, he should compile the data, and he should also give his suggestions, and with that his work will be done. He should only act as a catalyst, and he should not directly involve in implementation of any of the whatever programs or whatever suggested for the welfare of that people. This is what is called as action anthropology. Further, Robert Redfield, McKim Marriott, Milton Singer. We have discussed about Robert Redfield, isn't it? In which topic? Even 2 days back we discussed tribe caste continuum. He gave us the concept of folk culture continuum, isn't it? Folk urban continuum in his book Folk Culture of Yucatan, and that was further applied to the Indian context as tribe caste continuum. Robert Redfield. Then McKim Marriott, Milton Singer, we've discussed about them as well. LP Vidyarthi, MN Srinivas, all of these people did a number of village study and civilization studies, including Great Tradition, Little Tradition, Universalization, Parochialization, Tribe Caste Continuum in India, Rural Cosmopolitanism, Folk Urban Continuum. So all these studies happened during this period between 1950 to 1990, which is the third phase of the growth of Indian anthropology. Right? So you can also write about each of these. Since we have already discussed this in detail and have given separate material for each of these concepts, be it Great Tradition, Little Tradition, Tribe Caste Continuum, Rural Cosmopolitanism, Universalization, Parochialization and all, I have not repeated that here in the material for growth and growth of Indian anthropology. However, you can extract content from there and you can include it here also. Remember, anthropology is a holistic study. You should look at it from a holistic perspective, from an all-round perspective, and not as individual topics here and there. Got it? Okay. Evaluative phase, the last phase of growth of Indian anthropology, which begins from 1990 onwards up to the present, is the evaluative phase. That is the fourth phase of growth of Indian anthropology. Evaluative phase. Now, during the evaluative phase, anthropologists became more and more concerned about the problems of their own society, influenced by postmodernism. Postmodernism, already sir has discussed in culture theories, isn't it? So now in the fourth phase, that is the evaluative phase, which begins from 1990 onwards until present, the anthropologists became more and more concerned about the problems of their own society, and they were influenced by postmodernism, and to some extent during this period, M.N. Srinivas, S.C. Dubey have contributed to the growth of Indian anthropology, and anthropologists started focusing more on the social change in India due to a number of internal and external factors and minute studies within the complex society. So from 1990 onwards, there's not much progress which is happening in the anthropology field. The growth of Indian anthropology can be studied in 4 different phases. First one is the formative phase beginning from 1774 to 1919. The establishment of the Asiatic Society of Bengal marks the beginning of the first phase, that is the formative phase. That is followed by the second phase, that is a constructive phase. The beginning of this constructive phase is with the introduction of a postgraduate curriculum in anthropology in the Calcutta University. And third one is the analytical phase, during which, that is after independence, now the Indian anthropologists came under the influence of American anthropologists, and lot number of American anthropologists traveled to India along with their students, and they did significant contribution in village studies. There was a shift noticed from the study of the tribal people towards village and civilization studies, and 1990 onwards we have the fourth phase, that is the evaluative phase, during which the anthropologists are more and more concerned about the problems of their own society, and they are more focused on the social change in India due to a number of factors, and they are trying to study the internal and external factors which are leading to the change in the social fabric of Indian society and within this complex society. Apart from this, there are certain contributions also given by M.N. Srinivas and S.C. Dubey during the evaluative phase. Hope you all are clear with growth of Indian anthropology. Now we shall discuss the contribution of Indian anthropologists. Contribution of Indian anthropologists. This is also in unit 4 in paper 2 anthropology. Contribution of Indian anthropologists, wherein we will be studying about the anthropologist, what are the famous studies that he did, what are the books or the journals, whatever he published during this period. So it is entirely factual content. I will be going through the contributions of each and every anthropologist, and I will be telling you the important works. So many times students come and ask me, ma'am, there is so much about the Indian anthropologists, lot number of Indian anthropologists are there and their contributions is also vast. So how do we even memorize all of this? But the growth of Indian anthropology and contribution of Indian anthropologists is very important. You will have to memorize few important books and works of each of these anthropologists. Again, when we are discussing the growth and contribution of Indian anthropologists, please keep in mind that we will be discussing about anthropologists who are belonging to other countries as well. However, we consider them as Indian anthropologists because they have contributed to Indian anthropology. They have done some research in Indian anthropology and they have contributed for that. And hence, here we are not showing any bias based on the nationality of the anthropologist. Instead, all of them, irrespective of their nationality, if they have contributed for the study and growth of Indian anthropology, we consider them as Indian anthropologists. Is that clear? Fine. Now, as and how I tell you about the Indian anthropologists and their important contributions, their important books, what are the studies, what are the journals that they published, so on, you can keep the material along with you and mark it in your materials so that you know what to memorize or what to recall and what to write in your answer. Understood? Fine. So I'll be telling the name of the Indian anthropologists and their important contributions. As and how I'm telling you, please mark it in your copies. That will help you to memorize that and write in the examination. First one is Sarat Chandra Roy. He studied the Mundas, Oraon, Birhor. So which region do all these tribes belong to? Munda, Oraon, Birhor. All these are Central Indian tribes, isn't it? They belong to the Madhya Pradesh region. So he also studied the religion and culture of Oraon. Sarath Chandra Roy has rightly been called as the father of Indian anthropology or father of Indian ethnography. He is the first Indian anthropologist and first Indian ethnographer. So Roy was a lawyer and he used to visit the interior areas of Chota Nagpur Plateau on commission from courts, and he could observe the plight of the tribal people over there from very close. Then he was deeply moved by the hardships and oppression that the tribal people, especially the Munda communities, were facing in this region. And then he realized that if I still continue with the profession of lawyer, I cannot do much for the welfare of this Munda communities. And so he quit his job and he started working for the Mundas. How nice, isn't it? So he started studying about the tribal people, and he gave his first publication, which was Munda and their country in 1912. Munda and their country in 1912. And this book, Munda and the country in 1912, is the first monograph written on an Indian tribe by an Indian writer. That is why it is very, very important. This was the first time an Indian anthropologist studied an Indian tribe and wrote a monograph on them. That monograph is Munda and their country in 1912. That is why he is rightly called as first Indian ethnologist or Indian anthropologist. Then later, Sarath Chandra Roy also went to become the Legislative Council member in Bihar. That is Bihar Legislative Council. He became a member, and he was also a member of the provincial committee that sat with Simon Commission in 1928. Then in 1912, he started the research journal Man in India. Man in India is very, very, very important. So whenever you are writing about the growth of Indian anthropology, contribution of Indian anthropology, or about Sarath Chandra Roy, Man in India definitely has to be in your answer. Okay. S.C. Roy was also a source of inspiration for other anthropologists like Nirmal Kumar Bose, Dhirendranath Majumdar. Then S.C. Bose, Sarath Chandra Roy was the first to draw a study of the Mundas of the Chota Nagpur Plateau. And in the book Man in India, he gives details about the Mundas. He speaks about the Mundari language, their folk tales, proverbs, and so on. So that is very important. First one is Man in India. First one is Munda and their country. Second one is Man in India. And third one is the next book, which deals with the Oraon tribes, again a Central Indian tribe which are present in the Chota Nagpur region. They are also a major tribe present in Chota Nagpur, and here he draws light upon a practice called as Dhumkuria or youth dormitory. Dhumkuria or birds on trees. Dhumkuria or birds on trees. So few times in the exam there has been a short note question, birds on trees. So many people who did not know what is birds on trees, they started writing about various birds, isn't it? Peacock, parrot, pigeon, crow, whatever birds they could get in mind on that, in the examination, they wrote about those birds over there. Is that the right answer? No. Here, birds on trees means Dhumkuria, or it is also called as youth dormitory. What are these youth dormitory? So among the Oreons, they had this culture that after a certain age, so when the children after say 10 years or 12 years, when they are reaching into teenage, when they are entering into teenage, they will no longer stay with their parents in the same home. Instead, there will be a separate hostel kind of arrangement, or you can call it as a dormitory, where all the boys and girls who are in this age group of teenage will go to that hostel kind of setup, and they will live over there. So it will be a huge dormitory. I'm sure you understand what's the meaning of dormitory, right? So there will be a huge dormitory wherein all the boys and girls belonging to this region, that Orion, they used to go stay over there. They used to sing, they used to dance, they used to play, they used to learn a lot of activities, and they would also, it is said that the elderly girls who were present in the dormitory used to train the younger boys in sexual activities. So this has also been revealed. Okay, so just like how now we have the live-in relationship prior to marriage, right? So guys and girls live together, and if they want to go ahead, they will go ahead with marriage, or if they find they are not compatible, they will split and go off. So it is something like the modern live-in, but that time it was not called as live-in or something. Here they had this practice that children, once they are grown up, they are entering into adolescence, they will no longer stay with their parents in the same families, in the same homes. Sorry, they still belong to the family, but they will not stay in the same home. Instead, they will go and stay in the youth dormitories, where all boys and girls are free to mingle with each other, play, dance, sing, learn activities, and also get sexual training. It was S.C. Roy who reported this practice of the Orions, this concept of youth dormitory or birds on trees or Dumkuria that was present among the Orion, that was prevalent among the Orion tribes. Later what happened was, many people, outsiders, they started taking advantage of this. They started penetrating into the regions where the Orion stayed, so that they could go to these Dumkuria and they could exploit the children who are staying over there for their gains, isn't it? So then even S.C. Roy and other anthropologists also, they started telling that no, there is no such concept of youth dormitories or Dumkuria that is prevalent among the Orions. It was something false that we told earlier, but actually in true sense there was this concept of youth dormitory or Dumkuria which is prevalent among the Orion community. This is called as birds on trees. Okay, so when you get a short note question or any question in the examination saying birds on trees, please don't write about parrot, pigeon, peacock, sparrow, crow and so on. Write about this concept of Dumkuria or youth dormitory, which was given by S.C. Roy in his book. What's the name of the book? They haven't given the name of the book, but this is the concept, Dumkuria or youth dormitory. Then a second book was also, he also wrote a second book on the Orion tribe. Based on that book gives us information about the religious and magic beliefs of the Orions. Then he also gives us a monograph on Birho tribe, which is again a Central Indian tribe. So he did extensive study among the Munda, Orion and Birhors, who are the tribes which are inhabiting the Jharkhand, Chota Nagpur region. Then he also studied caste system in India. His main contribution in the field of prehistoric archaeology was the digging up of the Asura site. This is very, very important. Asura site. So many times they have given questions on this Asura site. So please do not ignore this. Asura site. This is one important contribution of S.C. Roy in the field of prehistoric archaeology. So please remember Asura site. What is this Asura site? So he made investigation and found that there are certain villages containing the remains of various ancient bricks, buildings, stone, temples and so on. And when he analyzed the age of those remains which he got from those villages, that age was similar to the age of the artifacts which they obtained from the Indus Valley. So he said these villages also existed at the same time when Indus Valley civilization existed. Got it? What he did was he dug up a place, okay, called as Asura site. That site is called as Asura site. There he got various remains from the village remains like brick buildings, stone temples, sculptures, copper implements, ornaments, bronze tools, iron implements. So whatever he dug up from this Asura site, and he calculated the age of that, and Indus Valley civilization was almost equal. So he says that these villages have existed during the time of Indus Valley civilization. That is why Asura site is very, very important. Do not forget that. Then he also gave us the concept of action anthropology by Soltax. Just now I told you what is action anthropology, isn't it? He also established the Chalcolithic culture of the Kushan period. Then he also is a highly respected man when dealing with administrative problems in dealing with the tribals. Okay. Then comes S.C. Dubey or Shyam Charan Dubey. S.C. Dubey or Shyam Charan Dubey. Some of his important publications are The Kamar, Indian Village, India's Changing Villages. All these are his important publications. Dubey's first book, The Kamar, in 1951, deals with the total study of the tribe in Madhya Pradesh. So the Kamar deals with the study of the Kamar tribe of Madhya Pradesh. Then his another book, Indian Village, deals with the total study of the village, Shamir Pet. That is, he gives us a picture of the functioning of village institution. What are the village institution? Panchayats. So he speaks about the functioning of the panchayats in this village, Shamir Pet. Then he also contributed in family planning research. That is IUCD. What is IUCD? Intrauterine contraceptive device. So he suggested this new method of contraception. So we have various methods of contraception both in men and women. This intrauterine contraceptive devices are also very popular. Then comes Dhirendranath Majumdar or D.N. Majumdar. His study of the Ho tribe of Kolhan, Bihar, that is a Ho Bongaism, is very famous. D.N. Majumdar. D.N. Majumdar, his study of the Ho tribe of Kalhan. Is very famous, and his he was a functionalist. Okay, so you know what is structuralism, what is functionalism, what is evolutionism, what is diffusionism. We have discussed all of these topics in length in culture theories, right? And even culture personality. So D.N. Majumdar was a functionalist. His important book is Himalayan Polyandry in 1962. Then he also gives ethnographic accounts of the Ho tribe of Bihar, the Khasa, Korwa, the Tharu. Tharu are the criminal tribes of UP. Okay, the Gond of Bastar, the Bills of Gujarat, and he also published books on Ho and Khasa. He was the first Indian anthropologist to study and write about the impact of non-tribal culture on the way of life of Indian tribes. So how non-tribal culture influenced the Indian tribes. He gives a detailed book about that. Then his posthumous books are Khasa, Himalayan Polyandry. In Himalayan Polyandry, he discusses about the Khasas of Juansari region of Himalayas. Then he also conducted extensive anthropometric and serological survey. What do we mean by anthropometry? Measurement of body parts, that is anthropometry. So when you take up any specific course in anthropology, say an MA or a BA or MSc, you will have practicals in anthropometry. Even I have done practicals in anthropometry. We will have different instruments using which we have to measure our body height, different parts of our body, the weight, height, weight, measurement of the nose. There are different instruments for that. Okay, so length of the nose, breadth of the nose, and here this measurement. Okay, crown of the head, here this measurement, and here this measurement. So different experiments will be there. So this is anthropometry. Serological survey means based on blood, right? So depending on blood groups. So he was the one who conducted extensive anthropometric and serological survey in UP, Bengal, Gujarat, and he also collected similar data among the Ho of Bihar and Gond of Bastar. Fortunately, you don't have practicals in anthropology because you are preparing for civil services examination, so you need not break your head for all those things. Otherwise, if you take up any proper degree course in anthropology, you will have these practicals in physical anthropology, and even serological studies is also part of physical anthropology, and I have done it. Okay, fine. Next is Nirmal Kumar Bose or N.K. Bose. Nirmal Kumar Bose. He was a visiting scholar in the University of Chicago, and he also received the President's Award Padma Shri in 1966. And one important thing about Nirmal Kumar Bose is he was an ardent follower of Gandhiji. He was a Gandhian, and whenever Gandhiji launched any movement, what he used to do was he used to quit his job and he used to go and join the movement, and he used to even get jailed because of this. Then after coming back from jail, again he used to go and rejoin the job and he used to continue with his job. So like this, he has taken part in various, in almost all the movements that was taken up by Gandhiji. So he was a true Gandhian in nature, and he was also arrested during the Quit India movement. That is one important speciality of Nirmal Kumar Bose. He received the Padma Shri Award in 1966. His important publications are Cultural Anthropology, Excavations in Mayurbhanj, Modern Bengal, and so on. Bose was also a functionalist by nature, and Cultural Anthropology he has taken a functional approach in defining the nature of culture. I already told you he is a functionalist. Bose also contributed to the study of caste system through his articles Hindu Method of Tribal Absorption, Caste in India, Some Aspects of Caste in Bengal, Paleolithic Archaeology of Mayurbhanj. Where is Mayurbhanj? I want to know if you all are still awake or already fallen asleep after a good heavy lunch. So I will not tell you, I will expect you to send me the answer. Okay? Then comes LP Vidyarthi. LP Vidyarthi. I don't know why my handwriting is going bad every single day. Do you know something? Even your handwriting depends on your mood. So if you're in a very good mood, your handwriting also comes out very, neat and precise and good. Whereas if your mood is not that good, then it reflects in your handwriting also. Same is the case with every other activities, right? So how you react with people in the traffic signal, how you react with your colleagues, with your parents, friends, or how much you eat, that is also psychological, right? When you are more stressed, when you are very anxious, when you are preparing for the exam and very much stressed about something or anything that is disturbing you, you tend to eat a lot more in comparison to the quantity which you eat when you're calm and relaxed. How many of you have observed all these things, and have you noticed these things? Also, whenever you are very anxious or frustrated or nervous, you mostly tend to eat more of junk foods, especially sugary foods. Sugary foods, and even for people who love chocolates, they tend to gravitate more towards chocolates because that is a comfort food. It relaxes you. Isn't it? It is true. I have read many articles on chocolates, and I know that it has, if I don't know how many of you will believe if I tell you this, it has the same chemicals. Chocolate has the same chemicals that is released, which is the same chemicals which are released when you have sex. That is why you feel so relaxed, and it is a relaxing food. Chocolate is a relaxing food. So whenever you are stressed, you tend to reach out to foods rich in chocolate, either chocolate or chocolate pastry or fudge or chocolate ice cream, whatever, right? Okay, let's get back to LP Vidyarthi. His important books are Sacred Complex in Hindu Gaya, the Malair, that is in the Malair tribes. What concept did he give? Nature, man, spirit complex. Are you able to recall? We have discussed this in depth. Nature, man, spirit complex, then Tribal Culture of India, Rise of Anthropology in India. Next, moving on to Okay, still we shall continue with LP Vidyarthi. His contribution of sacred complex of Hindu Gaya. And his contribution on applied and action anthropology is given in his book Applied Anthropology in India. Next, moving on to M.N. Srinivas. M.N. Srinivas. M.N. Srinivas was a structural functionalist. His important books are Marriage and Family in Mysore, Caste in Modern India. He was also under the influence of Radcliffe Brown, and thus he also became a structural functionalist. And he gave us the concept of Sanskritization in his book Religion and Society Among the Coorgs of South India. We have discussed Sanskritization, Westernization in detail, NMS complex, sacred complex, Sanskritization, Westernization. At least if we are not able to recall what exactly these topics are, like what it like probably you would have forgotten it because we've discussed it long back, but at least you know that these topics have been discussed in Indian anthropology. If you know that much, that is more than enough. You need not worry. Once again, say after your prelims, if you take out the notes and you read it once, automatically you'll be able to recall everything that I taught in the class. Okay, so do not worry, keep calm, just focus on your prelims as of now. So once anthropology is completed, the syllabus is completed, if you get time, go through the entire material once and keep it away. Do not read anthropology or focus on anthropology as of now. Concentrate exclusively for your preliminary examination, and once your preliminary is over, you can go back to your anthropology materials and you can start reading that, and again we will be there to guide you always. Fine. He gave us the concept of Sanskritization, Westernization, secularization, and dominant caste, and village studies also. Next, moving on to B.S. Guha or Biraja Sankar Guha. B.S. Guha or Biraja Sankar Guha. B.S. Guha was a physical anthropologist who had his professional training at the University of Harvard in 1924. He also was in charge of the census operations during 1931 as the government anthropologist, and he was also officer of the Anthropological Society of India. So it was under the enormous efforts put forward by B.S. Guha that the Anthropological Society of India came into being. Thus, he was appointed as the Director of Anthropological Survey of India until his death. So he served as a Director of Anthropological Survey of India right from the day of its creation until his death. He was involved in the census operations during 1931. And he also excavated human remains at Nal, Mohenjo-daro. Next, moving on to K.P. Chattopadhyay or Kshitish Prasad Chattopadhyay. K.P. Chattopadhyay. K.P. Chattopadhyay. He did extensive fieldwork among the Korku of the Melghat, the Kasi and the Santal. His important books are reports on Santals in Bengal and so on. Then comes G.S. Ghurye or Govind Sadashiv Ghurye. So in this G.S. Ghurye, His important works are Caste and Race in India, he also supported the assimilation of backward tracts to the rest of India politically. Then comes a female Indian anthropologist. So many times, even in interview, you can face these questions. So with anthropology optional, when you go for the interview, they'll ask you, and if you're a girl, that is, if you're a woman, they will ask you, tell me something about at least one Indian female anthropologist. So then you'll have to speak about Iravati Karve. Iravati Karve is a woman anthropologist in India, and her important books are Kinship Organization in India and Hindu Society and Interpretation. Further, about Verrier Elwin and Heimendorf, that is von Führer Heimendorf, many times there have been short notes question asked. So even at least 2 or 3 years back, there was one short note question on von Führer Heimendorf. So Verrier Elwin is also important, and von Führer Heimendorf is also important. Verrier Elwin, again, he was English born. He came to India with the intention of conversion to Christian, to convert the tribal population into Christianity. So he was a Christian missionary. Then he did exhaustive studies among the Baigas and the Gonds of Orissa in Madhya Pradesh, and he also worked on the tribals in the Northeast Frontier Agency, and he settled in Shillong. And after India got independence, he was the advisor to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Okay, that is why Verrier Elwin gave the concept of isolation of tribes. That is, you just leave them isolated. Do not bring them to the mainstream society. This is what he suggested. Okay, Verrier Elwin is very important. Please read about him. That is the racial classification of Indian population by different anthropologists. Racial classification of Indian population. Racial classification of Indian population. This comes under Unit 2, though it has not been exclusively mentioned in the syllabus, but this comes under Unit 2 of Paper 2 Anthropology, where sir would have already discussed the demographic profile of India, including factors affecting the structure and growth, population theories, and also the linguistic elements in Indian population. Sir would have already discussed. So I will be discussing only the racial classification of the Indian population. Sir has already discussed the linguistic elements in Indian population. India has been a melting pot of races. So you can find all the major races present in India. So classification of Indian population based on race is a difficult task, isn't it? We have Proto-Australoid, we have Negroid elements, we have Mongoloid elements. So India has been a melting pot of races. We have all races present in our country. So different anthropologists classified Indian population differently. So that is what we will be discussing in this topic. That is how different anthropologists have classified Indian population, the entire Indian population, based on races. Sir has already discussed what is race, racism. Race and racism chapter has been completed. So no need to go into depth discussing again what is race and racism. Let's straight away focus on the classification given by various anthropologists. First one is Sir Herbert Hope Risley in 1915. Risley classification. So this also the classification of Indian population based on races based on different anthropologists is an important question. Almost every year you will get it in your paper 2 examination. So Risley's classification, Guha's classification, all of this is very, very important, and there are few terms you have to memorize those terms. Okay. So Risley, Sir Herbert Risley was the first person who attempted the classification of India on a scientific basis. He was a civil servant in 1890, and based on this study, that is on the basis